What's up, y'all? It's your girl Amanda, and we are back with another episode of Mandy's Entertainment Reviews. So, this episode, I am reviewing the Hulu documentary Sly Lives and the Burden of Black Genius. As I stated before, this is on Hulu, ready and available. It was released February 2025. And I thought it was a wonderful documentary. I knew who Sly Stone was. My grandmother would play his music around her house a lot. My mother and my father were 50s, 60s, and 70s babies, so of course they had their music or his music in their collection. But I didn't know who Sly Stone was in detail. Like if you show me an album cover, I'd say, "Oh, okay, that's Sly Stone, Sly and the Family Stone." All right, dance to the music, or thank you for let me be myself. I knew that for sure. But I also I really enjoyed seeing artists that sampled his music. I haven't seen Q-Tip in a while, and he looks so different with the dreadlocks, so it was nice to see him, as well as Questlove, who actually produced this documentary, and I am also a fan of his podcast. What is it called? Questlove. Darn, I forgot what it's called, but I do listen to it. It's in my library. It can't come to me right now. And also, when I was watching this, I was scared because I know Sly and the Family Stone, but it's not enough. And I was scared, like, okay, Sly and the Family Stone's on TV, and then my mind would probably go to, scrolling through my phone or just not paying attention. But it kept my attention, which is a huge sigh of relief. And I ended up really enjoying the documentary. So, as you guys know, I do my reviews in KWL. And if you were too busy eating other people's lunches in the coat closet of your first grade classroom, you would know that KWL means know, want to know, and learned. So, let's start with No. I know that he was in a funk group from the 1960s to the 1970s. He was a singer. He had a relationship with Clive Davis, who is a very famous A&R. And the only reason why I know that is because I actually had just finished reading Clive Davis's book, which is super long but super good and very informational. Um, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself has been sampled a lot in hip hop. And Sly Stone had a drug problem. I remember seeing him on TV years ago that he was trying to get clean or was clean. He was living in like a camper in LA, and he was an old man basically. But I hear that recently he did get himself like extremely like 100% clean, and he's doing well with his family. And also, I wanted to share that he was bandmates with Larry Graham, and if that name does not sound familiar, he is rapper slash singer Drake's uncle. And I'm not gonna go into Drake because Drake has caught a lot of ills these past few months, so I'm gonna spare him. I'm gonna spare him. All right, so what do I want to know? So Sly Stone is in his 80s. I wanted to know about, his childhood, what it was like for him growing up. I wanted to know his introduction to music. I wanted to know if there were any stories out there of him being a black act in the 1960s. We hear stories about Motown and, you know, uh, the gentleman from Philadelphia. I know one of their last names is Gamble. It's 6:30 in the morning. I'm recording this, so my mind isn't really working right now. But those gentlemen as well. So I wanted to know if there were like stories like similar to Motown or anything. I wanted to know about his life after music. I know he kind of stopped doing music well, not stop, but things kind of slowed down for him in the late 70s to the 80s to the 90s. So I wanted to know like what was he up to? Like was he in any other business ventures or anything like that? And also now I wanted to know what life was like now for Sly. Even though like I said, I saw years ago on TV he was, living in a camper and stuff, but that was probably like when I was in high school. But what is he doing now in 2025 is what I wanted to know. Yes, and I always do. I put a disclaimer on my podcast. What I want to know may or may not be answered with what I learn. I just write this stuff down and I want to share with you. So if you don't like it, you don't have to listen past this point. So, what I learned first was that Sly and the Family Stone was a multiracial group of friends. Growing up, whenever I heard Sly and the Family Stone, I always thought it was a predominantly black funk group. But once watching this documentary, I see that there were black, white, Jewish, and all the races in the group, and they did make really good music. So that was good to see. And another fact is I kind of had to put two and two together. I remember when I was a little girl, I watched Toyota commercials. I Am Everyday People song by Sly and the Family Stone was used in Toyota commercials back in like 98, 99 to promote, I think, the new Camrys and I think it was, yeah, the Camrys. The ones that look like the Mercedes ES 300s, those cars, I remember the commercials. Um, in the beginning of the documentary, I did see him without glasses, and he does kind of favor like a distant relative of Lou Rawls. That's just my opinion. I'm like, this dude looks god awfully like Lou Rawls. Like he could be his little brother or his son or something. Like they looked so familiar. Sly Stone had a radio show in the 60s in San Francisco. I thought that was interesting. Someone who went from radio to singing. I don't hear a lot of stories about that. I hear singing to radio or singing to podcast radio. That's common now, but radio to singing. That was not common to me. Sly's family was a part of the Great Migration, which my family is a part. I connect with anybody whose family is a part of the Great Migration. So Sly Stone's family is from Texas. My family, on my mother's side, is from Mississippi. My mother's parents and my father's parents. The only grandparent I had that was actually born in the Midwest was my grandfather, but the rest of his siblings were born down south. But because his family had moved up, then my grandpa was born, so he wasn't born in the South like my uncles were. And then my grandmother, my dad's mother, was born in Memphis. So anytime I hear about a great migration story, I just black power, power to them. I love hearing stories like that, and I like hearing people talk about where their families are from and stuff. But my family migrated. My mother's parents migrated to Chicago, where I'm from, and my dad's from Michigan, so yeah, there's that. Um, Sly was a singer in the church. He was a gospel singer. He had basically music on wax, gospel music, and it kind of reminded me of Casey and JoJo and how they had music on on vinyl as well, and they were gospel singers as kids. And also, he was in a singing group in high school. He attended a semester of junior college, and let me tell you, junior college is not for everybody. I don't know how I got out and survived it, but it's really not for everyone. Let's see. He had very interactive shows, like he interacted with the audience. I think that's like the oldest act that I've seen interact with audience members. But of course, as the years are very recent, like in Vegas and stuff, Usher and all them, they interact with the audience. But I didn't know that that was a thing in the 60s. Another shocking thing I didn't know was Nile Rodgers, who is a part of the group Cheek, who made Good Times with a good time. He was a part of the Black Panthers. I did not know that. I always look at him as like the music producer of like funk and disco. I didn't know he was like in the Black Panthers. Um Also, Sly Stone's music influenced Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis's inspiration for Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation. I always thought that they just went in the studio and came up with something, hit them and Janet, but Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam, they set everything up, and they showed Janet. Well, they didn't show, but they let Janet hear, and she was just amazed. And they actually got to tell that story in the documentary. Sly Stone had a house in Bel Air, which is a big freaking deal if you're black and you're a big time music act. Living in Bel Air is like bougie. Okay, bougie. And then by the time they got to the drugs that we all knew he struggled with, he used to be late for concerts and people would boo. And his tardiness or absenteeism actually caused a riot in Chicago where 3 people were shot, which I never knew about that. I never heard no history about that around the city. Guys know the song Family Affair? It's a family affair. See, I can't sing, but this song was actually about family dysfunction, and yet people play them at family reunions. Why? Just why? Um, there's a riot going on, actually inspired my favorite Outkast album, Stankonia, The Flag. Yeah, it inspired Stankonia, the album cover, which the album is just life for me. He got married during a concert. Bizarre. Um, he did weird stuff to stay relevant. They did show him playing table tennis on TV. I don't think that was in America. That was probably over there somewhere in Europe. He was almost signed to Motown, which I did talk about Motown earlier in the episode. The reason why he was not signed to Motown, Suzanne DePass, who was like, she used to work for Motown. She basically said that, Sly Stone was damaged goods, which meant he was just too off the drugs for him to be signed to a record label like Motown. He Sly went on tour with Parliament Funkadelic, which I am very familiar with their music. My parents play their music all the time. He did drugs with George Clinton, who is a part of Parliament Funkadelic. They did crack together, and they both ended up getting busted in 1981 during a time where it was the crack epidemic. Crack has never been legal in this country, so yeah, they got caught with that. His drug use had influenced how his children played. His daughter told a story about how she pretended to do blow with sugar, and her mother saw it, and basically she got into a lot of trouble, which is pretty sad. Like, people would think, oh, that's funny, but no, it's pretty sad if you really think about it. He got inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993, so 32 years ago. And people thought that he wasn't going to show up, but he made a surprise appearance. He did look a lot older. He had like a weird haircut and all that stuff, but he showed up. And lastly, he is clean and he is close with his children and his grandchildren, which that does answer my last one to know is like, how is life now for Sly Stone? So, this documentary, I do give it a 4.5 star out of 5. I loved seeing the new and old school artists. I loved seeing D'Angelo, and I'm so proud of D'Angelo because, like, if this was 12 years ago, we would not see nothing about no D'Angelo. But he's starting to make more appearances. He also had a documentary that came out somewhere in Europe on the Sundance tour or whatever. So we're seeing more of him. What I disliked was basically we didn't see Sly Stone in 2025 form. We only heard his voice from like archival interviews. So, but I did enjoy this documentary and I did enjoy y'all joining me for this review. Please stay tuned for another episode of Thompson and Stuff, which will be released probably after I record this episode. And thank y'all for all y'all support. I'll see y'all later. Peace.